After Baha'u'llah's passing, the mansion was occupied for many years by other relatives, and Abdu'l-Baha rented a small house near his tomb. For 16 years after his father's death, Abdu'l-Baha continued to be a prisoner in Akka. When the officials were friendly, he had more freedom. Often he stayed here in Baji, where he received many pilgrims. From the age of 9, when he went to the dungeon in Tehran to ask if his father was still alive, he shared all the suffering and injustice heaped upon Baha'u'llah. Abdu'l-Baha's love for his fellow men never wavered. In Akka, he became known as the father of the poor. This simple room brings him very close to us. The coffee set used to serve his guests. His own binoculars. His tea things. The successor of Baha'u'llah was like a stainless mirror that reflected his light to perfection. At the foot of Mount Carmel, in what was once the old city of Haifa, lies Abdu'l-Baha's house on Persian Street, so called because originally most of the Baha'is who were Persians lived here. When the Universal House of Justice was elected in 1963, this building, which was once the Western Baha'i Pilgrim House, became its temporary office, pending the completion of a permanent headquarters on Mount Carmel. Across the street is the home of Abdu'l-Baha. The brass plaque bearing his name in Arabic still remains on the entrance gate. This large house was not only his residence, but many members of his family also lived here. Abdu'l-Baha's bedroom was on the sunny side of the house, behind these windows. The upper story is the apartment of Shoghi Effendi, added to the house as an office and living quarters of his own. That little room was sometimes used by Abdu'l-Baha. We even have this old photograph showing him up there. This is the main entrance of the home of Abdu'l-Baha, which was completed in about 1908. And during the following 2 years, he and the members of his family moved over here. This marked the end of his long imprisonment in the city of Akka. And this is the scene of the ministry of Shoghi Effendi, the eldest grandson of Abdu'l-Baha and his successor, who was guardian of the Baha'i faith for 36 years, and he lived in this house, and all of his services to the Baha'i world took place in this house. Both of them received their guests in this very historic sitting room from the old days. This is undoubtedly one of the most historic rooms that we have in the Baha'i holy places in the Holy Land. And in this sitting room, Abdu'l-Baha received many very prominent guests. He received General Allenby, who was responsible after World War I for Abdu'l-Baha receiving a knighthood from the British government. He received the King of Iraq, King Faisal of Iraq. Abdu'l-Baha always sat in that corner of that particular sofa. And Shoghi Effendi, during his whole lifetime, refused to sit higher up in this room than had been the position of his beloved grandfather, the master. And he always sat in that corner of that sofa. Nobody ever of the master or the guardian sat higher than those two places. But they always invited their prominent guests, and if the room was full of guests, all of the guests, to always come higher, so that anybody like the President of the State of Israel or Lord Samuel, whoever it might be, was always invited to occupy the upper seats, because those were the seats of honor. And then, of course, the guests of the guardian were here. Shoghi Effendi also received, as had Abdu'l-Baha, a great many pilgrims in this room. This was the room that many of the pilgrims have amongst the deepest associations with Shoghi Effendi. There's a very lovely story about this room. The Greatest Holy Leaf went to Beirut, and she bought this furniture, this whole suite of furniture, for the reception room of her beloved brother Abdu'l-Baha. And then, finally, there were very few rugs on the property in those days. This rug was placed here in this room. And Abdu'l-Baha, as you know, was very generous. He used to like to give things to prominent people and give things to very poor people, including often the coat off his back. And so a day came when he wanted to give this very beautiful rug, which was really the only valuable rug in the possession of Abdu'l-Baha's family in those days, and which was the rug in his reception room, away. And Shoghi Effendi told me the Greatest Holy Leaf came, and she stood here. And she said, "Please, Abdu'l-Baha, not this rug. Just please leave this for your sitting room, because how will you entertain your guests if you haven't even got a rug on the floor?" The table in the middle of the room is from his days, but part of the other furnishings are from the days of Shoghi Effendi. And as I said, this room has many very precious associations with the lifetime of the master and the lifetime of the guardian. This is the hall of Abdu'l-Baha's house, and in the old days he used to sit with some of his guests, Europeans, that he would invite for lunch around this table. This is the bedroom of Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi placed these curtains here and distinguished it from every other room in the house out of respect. And this is the place where the guardian used to sleep and work as a young man. People come here and have the privilege of visiting the room in which the master passed away in 1921. This is the bed that he occupied, the bed in which he passed away. This is the chaise longue, which he used to often rest on instead of resting in his bed, his table, with the things that were there in his own lifetime. He always sat over in that corner, and he used to receive many of his guests and many of the pilgrims in this room rather than the sitting room. He had a constant stream of visitors, and many of them would have been received and seen in this room.
Inside this broken